I'm really looking forward to our first panel, which will be moderated by SRAP's own Senior Regional Representative, Karen Hudson. The panel is focused on telling stories from rural America, and there's no better way to start our work together than by grounding it in the narratives of people experiencing what corporate agribusiness does to communities. Karen Hudson is the perfect person to lead us into this exercise. Not only does she do incredible work with communities for SRAP, she lives on her 5th generation family farm in West Central Illinois and founded Families Against Rural Messes, a grassroots group in Illinois that opposes factory farms. If that weren't enough, she's a co-founder of Illinois Coalition for Clean Air and Water. She's been working to change industrial animal agriculture for 25 years, and her story is inspiring. She certainly inspires me, but I'm not the only one. Springfield's Abraham Lincoln Presidential Library recently installed a 17-year history of Karen's work in their permanent oral archives. So be ready to be inspired, and I look forward to the next couple days together. Thank you again for having me, and now let's hear from the communities leading this fight.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased to see folks from around the country on my panel today. I have been working on this issue, as you just heard, for 25 years, and on the team that we currently are on for about 22 years. And my children have watched me fight factory farms, and now my grandchildren are watching me fight factory farms and fight for a better food system and a just food system. So it's been an example to my family as they grow up through the years. And as a senior regional representative at SRAP, I act as a listener to the folks who call us. Sometimes we get calls at all hours of the day or night with folks who are just finding out these facilities are coming into their community. We're listeners. Then we collaborate. And we bring facts to the table, and we educate these people, and we teach them how to stand up for their rights and how to stand up for a just food system. So we're there for a shoulder to cry on, to shake hands, to congratulate people when they succeed. And it's been a joy to work with the people across the country. And the 3 people that I have here today are from different states. One is Sonja Eayrs. She's a farmer's daughter, a rural advocate, and also an attorney and business manager of Trom Family Farm out of Minnesota. And then I have Liza Doerr, owner of Northern Lakes Farm in Wisconsin. And for the past 2 years, Liza has worked with hundreds of people at the state, county, and local levels to preserve the way of life in her community. She's fighting the same fight that we're fighting here in Illinois, and that Sonja's fighting in Minnesota. And last of all, but not least, we have Robyn Olson, who is almost a neighbor of mine in an adjoining county, who just joined our coalition within the past year. She's a retired teacher, farm wife, and a group leader for a new group called the Concerned Fulton Farmers and Citizens of Fulton County, Illinois. So I'd like to introduce these 3 ladies who are really making a difference in their communities. And I'd like to start with, basically, we're gonna have a really relaxed session today. I'd like you to spend time and tell your story in about five minutes or so about how you got started into this issue. How did livestock facilities target your community, your family farm, and what effects they've had? And I'd like to start out with Sonja. Sonja, I know you have so many stories to tell. We could do an all-day session just on this subject, but I think today's panel is going to paint a very colorful picture of some of the situations that we've been in and some of the things that we've had to live through as we speak up for our rights. So go ahead and feel free to start, Sonja.
Thank you. Thanks, Karen. Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. Our family farm is situated in Dodge County, Minnesota. That's just west of Rochester, home to the famous Mayo Clinic, for those of you who have made a trip to Mayo Clinic. My great-grandfather settled in rural Dodge County in 1892. Our farm is situated in the heart of corn country. which also is situated, of course, in the heart of hog country. Minnesota is #2 in hog production in the United States, following Iowa's lead. Our family farm is surrounded by 12 swine factory farms in a 3-mile radius, or approximately 30,000 hogs. And my family has been, fortunately or perhaps unfortunately, on the front lines fighting industrial agriculture for years. And there I have a picture I'd like to share with you. This is a picture from the early 2000s. That's my mother in the white jacket. My dad is on the tractor. That's a picture that was taken almost 20 years ago. And at that time, the Citizens Group, which was known at that time as Citizens for a Healthy Dodge County, it's now known as Dodge County Concerned Citizens, successfully fought back against installation of what would have been at the time the largest dairy operation in the state of Minnesota, just a few miles north of our farm. Since 2014, my elderly parents have been involved in 3 separate lawsuits against pro-industry county officials and also industry operatives. When you're in litigation, you learn a lot about your opposition, and we know a lot about our opposition. I also want to share with you today a picture of what's called the power and control wheel. And just by way of brief background, I'm a family law attorney, which means I'm involved in divorce and custody proceedings, all of the sticky stuff. But I'm also trained in power and control dynamics. And power and control dynamics are present in many unhealthy marriages. For example, someone wants to gain sole custody of a child, or they want to take away funds from the non-moneyed spouse. These are all power and control dynamics. But rural communities, what I've noticed is that the same unhealthy power and control dynamics that are present in many of the divorce situations that I see are also present in rural communities. And several years ago, the industry giants pulled what I called a power play in order to assume a power position in rural America. The industry giants created essentially a pyramid scheme. And imagine a pyramid, and at the top of that pyramid, you have the big meat processors such as Hormel Foods, JBS, Tyson, Smithfield. In the middle, you have the integrators. Integrators own the pigs, and they provide feed and veterinary services to contract growers. And then at the bottom of that pyramid, you have contract growers, essentially farmers who are kind of worked to death. So this industrial system and corporate pyramid scheme has had a devastating impact and has hollowed out rural communities, including mine. The corporate culture has forced fundamental change in rural areas, and there's no tolerance for anyone to speak out against corporate agriculture. I am unique because I am in a position to speak out. I don't live in my home community. I don't work in my home community. And I live in the Twin Cities metro, an hour and a half away. But many of the power and control dynamics that I see daily, for example, in my family law practice, is to try and silence opposition from a wife, for example. I see the same type of activity in rural America. For example, they use intimidation tactics. Bullet holes, for example, were shot in the stop sign just a few hours after my brother and I pulled weeds out of the bean field just a few feet away. A manure tanker, and I want to share with you a picture of a manure tanker that tried to chase our vehicle off the road. My husband was driving and I stuck my arm out the window to take this picture a couple of years ago. We have endured years and years of harassment, including constant garbage that is dumped in our driveway and in our road ditches. These complaints are typically kind of dismissed as, oh, it's just another littering complaint. And I have filed numerous complaints with the Dodge County Sheriff's Department. I want to share with you too a picture that I took earlier this spring of garbage that was dumped. There's our farm in the background. Here's a bunch of garbage that was dumped in our road ditch that we picked up. And this is just a small portion of the garbage we've picked up over the years. But among those items, we had an interesting find earlier this year, and there was a flyer. And I want to share with you another picture of a flyer that we discovered in the garbage. This is a meeting notice for the Minnesota Pork Board and the Minnesota Pork Producers Association that included the name and address of an area factory farm operator. Other intimidation tactics have included things such as spraying pure Roundup on the corn, causing thousands and thousands of dollars in damage. They file false police reports. I've been several times on the receiving end where one of the Dodge County Sheriff deputies has shown up at our farm or some other location to inquire and question me personally, not because there was some offense, but it's a way for the industry to put heat on and for the industry to put heat on me personally. They also use emotional abuse. For example, they made late phone calls after midnight to my elderly father, saying things such as, "Have you changed yet?" And frankly, one of the most disgusting moves was they weaponized manure. And at my father's funeral 2 years ago, they spread manure that weekend, just feet from the funeral home, and also right in the immediate area of the rural cemetery where my dad lays. They also use economic abuse. They interfere with the neighbor's employment. They threaten to cancel business if a business person objects to installation of a factory farm. They go after employers. They try to get people fired. This is common and it's been going on for years. But I want to share with you, we're not alone. And I'm in communication with a number of other frontline families who are enduring similar harassment and intimidation tactics. The tactics are the same. The geographic locations are different. Thanks, Karen.
Sonja, thank you so much. You know, in listening to your stories, so many of my own experiences have popped up in my mind that have happened in the last 22 years. And it's wonderful that we can get together and talk about these things in front of others who feel isolated and feel that they are the only ones experiencing this, because this isn't a subject you often see on the internet or during conferences, telling our own stories of things that are intimidating us and trying to scare us into silence. And there's so many folks out there that I think are going to get quite a bit of value out of these stories that we're going to hear today. Next, Lisa, I'd like to, you're a busy lady, and I'd like you to tell us an overview of how you got involved in your issue in Polk County and some of the tactics and how they have impacted your Wisconsin community. And I know you're a very empowered lady, and I'd like you to give us some insight on how you got there and some of the things that are happening in your state. Thanks.
Oh, sorry, Lisa, just needed you to come off mute.
Hi, my name is Lisa Doerr, and I live in northwestern Wisconsin. I have some slides too. We'll see if I can pull them off here. I've been working with Sonja and actually just drying my tears from listening to what she has gone through. So I put together this little slideshow to give you a feel for what it's like here. I am part of a group of people in Burnett and Polk County. This is the state of Wisconsin, and these are the watersheds that make up our beautiful state. We have a lot of lakes and rivers. I live up in St. Croix County in the upper left-hand corner there. I'm sorry, in the St. Croix watershed, and Polk and Burnett County are our two counties that we now have proposal from a company called Suday, which is a large veterinary management company coming out of Iowa. And they have been working since 2019 to try to find a place to put their sow factories, because the amount of viruses that the PRRS in particular, but they're also concerned about the African swine fever, is getting so bad in southern Minnesota and Iowa that they are looking for new places to colonize with their factories. So just north of me, in the township north of us, one of the town chair had got in cahoots with them through the Farm Bureau, which I think is one of the networks that you'll find people working through, and sold them land, and they have applied for a farrowing plant with 26,000 hogs. Our towns, we've really worked at the local level to stop this at the town level. That's where we feel we're empowered. We did pass moratoriums in 4 towns to try to put the skids to slow things down so we could study things. And then we also passed moratorium in 2 counties. Unfortunately, our counties passed ordinances that do not protect our property values, our health, or our water quality. So we're continuing to work. Some of the tactics that they've used, I'll just give you a feel for. I'm guessing anyone living in a rural area is aware of the fact that our local media are under a huge amount of stress. So our big co-op, it's called a co-op, they're the ones who want to bring in the hog factory. They've set aside $4 million to build a grinder for it. And what they want is 5 sow factories, and then about 5 or 6 finishing factories around each sow factory that would put out like 200,000 hogs. So when our local paper started reporting on this, they actually went in from Burnett Dairy to the local paper and said that if they didn't fire that reporter, they would quit advertising. And then our county politicians that are also big Farm Bureau boys, they came in and said that if the paper didn't quit covering the CAFO issue, that the county would stop advertising in the paper. So basically this reporter got the hook, just like Kermit. Another thing that's happened is we've had, from the right wing of the world, we've had very strong support for the pro-CAFO people from the Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. In some states, it's called the Chamber of Commerce, and then the Wisconsin Dairy Alliance. And what they do is they pay for the lawyers to write these letters to, for example, to the Burnett County or Polk County commissioners, saying that if they pass a moratorium, it's a felony and that they'll have to go to jail. And one of the most colorful lawyers that we had is a woman named Lane Rulin, who's on the left here in the black dress. And she is the corporate counsel for Wisconsin Manufacturers and Commerce. She also acted as the counsel for the Trump campaign and the Kanye West campaigns in 2020, when Kanye was trying to get on the ballot in Wisconsin. And she showed up with this paperwork here in this picture, which was the petitions for him to get on the ballot. She showed up 3 minutes late, and they wouldn't let her in to file his petition, so he didn't get to run. But it gives you an idea of the level of lawyers that are working really, really top level, like, $1,000 an hour lawyers that they're using. The other thing that maybe some of you are seeing is we have a very pro-CAFO town board chair in my town. The town board chair north of us actually sold the land to the developers. And so what you'll see from the town board is they'll try to set the agenda up so that we can't talk, or if we are on the agenda, the chair will ask questions over and over and over again, literally like the same question. They allow personal attacks from the CAFO advocates. And honestly, in August, one of the people in the audience threatened to shoot us with their gun, and the chair did nothing. They oftentimes compare us to Antifa and Black Lives Matter, and that they're going to take care of us the way they would take care of Antifa or Black Lives Matter. So they very much try to reach out to kind of the far right. But what's interesting is we have a lot of far right people who do not want CAFOs in our town. So we kind of bridge a wide range of political views. Another big thing that they've done is a new one. Maybe you guys have heard of this, but our town board chair has now taken over our town website, and he's putting pro CAFO videos on the website, and then allowing personal attacks from the pro CAFO people against people who are fighting the CAFOs. So that's kind of a new one. And it's interesting, there's very few laws that we've been able to figure out in Wisconsin governing how the town board chairs can use the taxpayer funded social media. On a more personal level, this is kind of similar to what Sonja works with. Our neighbors are pro CAFO. They own 800 acres of land, but they decided that they needed to park this derelict, rusted out old trailer on our property line outside of my kitchen window. So every morning when we get up to have a drink of water and look out the window, we see this trailer. And, you know, this is kind of in the category of petty little things. And then the other thing that they did all summer was they own 800 acres, but every week they would run their manure from their cattle operation. They don't have a CAFO operation at this point, but from their cattle operation, they would take their manure spreader and run it down the property line of another one of my neighbors. So that's some of the petty stuff. This is another one that we've seen. Maybe you guys have seen some arrests, very arbitrary and capricious arrests. We've had protests every month outside of our county board. And at one of our protests, one of our people who is a hog farmer had a hog die. So he said that he was going to put this hog in a bucket and bring it to the county board meeting so they could smell what the pig smells like. Because as you guys know, there's thousands of dead pigs that these factories produce. So he showed up at the county government building, and they had the sheriff there, and the sheriff arrested him, took him to jail, fingerprinted him, but never looked in the bucket. And actually what the bucket had inside of it was a dozen ears of corn and a bouquet of daisies. So I don't know if you guys know the old song, you know, peace on earth was all the mountain people said. So they took this guy to jail. They fined him $50. He said, I'm not paying the fine. I want a trial. They said, oh, okay, then we're going to fine you $250. And he said, oh, no, I want a trial. I'm not going to plead guilty. So then they actually really and truly told him they were going to fine him $10,000 and put him in jail for 90 days. And he's like, oh, I just want a trial, because we want a trial. We want to know why this poor sheriff deputy had to arrest a guy with a bucket full of corn. At this point, looks like they are going to drop the charges, but we are not, that story is not quite over. So that was another tactic from our county board. Our county board is extremely pro CAFO. So that's why we've moved to the township level. How are we defending our trenches? Tactics from the trenches. We have come up with a lot of defenses. I think we'll talk about it more, but I think, Karen, you want us to answer that question specifically, or should I go with this now?
Let's go ahead and get Robyn, because I want to
Okay.
come back to that, defending the trenches, because that's something that we really need to cover.
Yeah, and I want people to know that they got their tactics, but we have ours too.
Yes, we've got ours, and one of them is Dr. John Eayrs, one of my mentors for all of these years. That was fantastic. Just it makes me feel less isolated that I've been through this. People I work with have been through this, and I noticed your story, and I knew I had to invite you onto this panel. Lisa, thank you so much. Next person I have to tell their story is Robyn Olson, and Robyn is from Illinois. She's a neighbor almost of mine in the next county over, in Fulton County, and she's going to tell us how she responded when she realized that twin factory farms were coming in to her community. And we've been working with her group for several months now. And she's really gotten on, she hit the ground running with all of the things that she had to learn to do with FOIAing information and being very, very vociferous about what is going on in her community. So please take it from here, Robyn, and you can tell us your story because it's going to inspire us as well.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Robyn Olson. I'm a retired teacher and my husband is a farmer. Our home is located about 3/4 of a mile from the proposed hog confinement. Our house is located northeast of the proposed property with prevailing winds from the southwest. We have lived at this residence for 18 years. We've acquired this property 27 years ago, hoping to build our retirement home here, which we did. We put in a pond, we have a garden, we fish, we hunt deer and turkey. And then in January of 2020, an individual came to us and asked us if they could put a hog confinement in our pasture, which would, he said, would place it further from our house so it wouldn't be such a problem for us. And we talked it over and said, we're really not interested in that. And he said, well, then would you trade us ground in another county? And then you could have the ground that's closest to you without the hog confinement being right next door. And we responded to him that we would not do that to our neighbors where we used to live in another county. We are 4th generation farmers. My son is the 4th. We have many multi-generational.
Oh, Robyn, it looks like we lost you for a minute. Can you hear us?
We have people that are 89, 95, and 100 coming, and we are very concerned about their health if they were exposed to 5,000 hog farm that was closer than 3/4 of a mile from our house where we were holding our reunion. We also have neighbors with respiratory diseases, autoimmune diseases that could be made worse. We've done our research about property taxes. We have talked about health issues. We've gone into research with John Eayrs, the John Hopkins research, and we have publicized that. We have sent out to every resident and every farm owner in our township just the facts on what one of these hog confinements would entail. And we got a lot of feedback, and we put on an online petition that people signed, and we took that to our county board, and we also took it to our township board. In Illinois, the township and the county boards don't have a lot of control. All this comes from the Illinois Department of Ag. So in getting to know the Department of Ag, we have found out that there's some really loose regulations that need to be strengthened. Let me go back to January of 2020. After this gentleman was here, I called the Illinois Department of Agriculture and I asked them, how will I know if this happens or not? Because this is just hearsay. You know, this gentleman came to us and said he was going to build one. And they told me that I would have to wait and watch for a permit that would be on the Illinois Department of Ag website. So for a year and a half until April of 2021, I checked that website weekly and there was nothing on there until April of 2021, where they applied. He applied with his brother, who is out of state, to put 2 barns, which would be connected by one driveway near our house. And they came in under the regulation of having to have a public hearing because they kept it under the required number of hogs by separating it into 2 different barns. So we were denied a public hearing. So when I petitioned we've written several letters to the Illinois Department of Ag, they said that they're perfectly within their rights to do it that way. And even after a discussion, one of the individuals said, well, you're right, it's one operation. And we proved that because they've only applied for 1 stormwater permit. And in that case, if they were 2 different businesses, it would have to be 2. So we've caught them on several things like this, that they're wanting to be 1, but they are really 2. And so we've had to do some research. They have another operation in another county, which was going to be replicated at where they were proposing this one. So we did some research and we found out that they had not put in, this was in 2015 when that one opened, they had not put in a septic system, which meant that they were putting human waste in with their hog waste, which was illegal. So through the health department, through the Illinois EPA, we have petitioned and sent letters, and excuse me, to that result, they had to put in a septic system. But I am still waiting to hear from the Illinois EPA how this could happen. How could they have a system that should be inspected by the Illinois Department of Ag and the Illinois EPA and have gone without a septic system for six years? And why don't you think that might be a problem for me down the road when they're mixing their hog waste with their human waste? We have put out news articles. SRAP has been great about helping us to do some publicity. We have put up signs. We have attended the board meetings. And one thing that we did find out in our research, that in 2 years, if one of these buildings goes up, in 2 years, they get increased by 50%, and that's grandfathered in. We have no say-so about whether we would not have a chance to talk about that in public. We've done a Facebook page. We have a great group of neighbors that have gotten together. We have a core about 6 to 8 people, and we were meeting weekly after we found this out. And we purchased signs. We have also talked to a lawyer because one of the things in the permit as we were going through it was that the ground was misrepresented in one owner's name when there were actually 4 owners' names. And unfortunately, the Illinois Department of Ag doesn't see that that's a problem, as our lawyer did. So we're still waiting for a response on that. It's been difficult because we're a very small community and people know each other and people have taken sides. One of the things that we've asked was if he wanted to put one up, put it by his house. And so he's investigating that. He is here until next April 21st, till that permit expires. And what we plan to do is to put a park in our pasture and put it and enlist it with the Historical Society. So that park would be too close to that proposed site. So that would end, hopefully, all this proposal forever. So that's what we're
Robyn,
looking at. We're still working in January. Yes.
Robyn, one of the things that I'll always remember is when the representative was at your home, I believe, and I was listening in on the phone. He made you hang up the phone so I couldn't hear him talk to your neighbors.
That's right.
No, Karen can't
Yeah.
listen from SRAP. I wanted to just listen in, and he said, no, he wasn't going to speak to you until you hung up the phone. And that was kind of the first taste of
That-
how this fight was going to be going. So
That's right.
I think it's
Yeah,
good that so far no ground has been broken to date. And,
That's
you know,
true.
so far so good. So I'm impressed with the work
Yeah.
that your group is doing, and we continue to work with you. I wanted to get back to Sonja. You know, just a few more questions, and then Sonja, I know you have so many things for us to know, but what would be some of your biggest roadblocks you've seen by your politicians? You know, I've had hijinks with my politicians over the last 20 years that secret meetings, deals behind the door. What are some of the things that you've experienced in Minnesota? I mean, I know that in Minnesota, a book was published by the Farm Bureau called When an Activist Group Comes to Town. And it had, you know, it was a booklet published by the Minnesota Farm Bureau, I call them Factory Farm Bureau, on how to act when an activist group comes to town. Like, we're really looking for places to go to disrupt communities. I know that you have a lot of experience with Farm Bureau, and I'd like you to kind of give us some insight on that.
So, well, I think, Karen, what we're seeing this morning, or this afternoon rather, with respect to some of the comments, is that these fights are extremely divisive. They divide families, they divide neighborhoods. With respect to industry supporters, you know, in our experience, you know, once they're in, they have an attitude of might is right. And like, you know, we're in charge now. And these industry supporters operate as a political, as an economic, and a secret brotherhood. They're very secretive. We went door to door in my home township, Westfield Township, in 2015, in an effort to adopt local planning and zoning. In Minnesota, you can adopt local planning and zoning that is more restrictive than the county in order to limit the proliferation of factory farms. And so we went door to door in order to get signatures on petitions. Well, Westfield Township is, you know, you can imagine it's a rural area. There's approximately 200 residents. We went way over the number of people that we needed in order to call a special meeting. And we did that on purpose because we knew we needed strength in numbers. And so we forced a special meeting. So the night of that special meeting, and the little Westfield Town Hall could have easily accommodated the meeting that industry, but it was clear that the pro-industry town board had been working in the background with the industry. And so the night of the special meeting, we show up, and they had backed out the road grader and other equipment from the large building, and they set up all of these chairs. Well, it was the hog mafia that showed up. And so the hog mafia shows up, and so did Jack Perry, who was legal counsel, who shows up. He was legal counsel on the other side, representing the industry in the 3 separate lawsuits my parents had, and then conveniently shows up, and he's legal counsel for the town board. So anyway, so that's, you know, that's kind of the experience we had there. And you know what was interesting, and then later that year, my husband and I went to a meeting in northern Minnesota in this tiny little town hall. And here were hog producers that showed up from southern Minnesota. They had made the 5-hour trip from southern Minnesota to go in, and they, you know, another power play where all these industry operatives show up, and this tiny little town hall, and they captured the meeting. So, so that's some of the stuff we've seen. With respect to politicians, I'll be honest with you, I don't think a lot of politicians quite honestly get it. They don't understand the level of turmoil. They don't understand how serious it is in rural America. Also, with respect to regulators, we've discovered that the regulators have been very little help in Minnesota. I contacted the MPCA, the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency, in 2017. My father, I'm sure, suffered from hydrogen sulfide poisoning. And I spoke with the officer. They were applying manure to frozen ground. It was lathered on top of the ground just north of our farm. And the MPCA officer didn't do anything. I spoke with him personally. He left on vacation. And then I obtained copies of his notes through a data practices request. And his notes indicated like 3 weeks later that, you know, acknowledging my call, but stating that, oh, by the time that he returned, you know, the smell had dissipated. So, and by the way, I filed a complaint just a couple of months ago because they were spreading manure on the edge of my hometown. I mean, the whole town reeked. It was horrifying. And I called the same officer. He hung up on me. So
I think I can identify with this. I attended a meeting in a tiny township room in the winter. My husband and I drove 2 hours to get there, and all the community was there in this tiny little room, and no one knew anybody. And in the back was the Illinois Livestock Development Group representative hiding in the corner. And before anybody said anything, I introduced him to the entire group because no one in town knew who he was, but it's the same thing where they infiltrate. We in our county boards, so many of these county boards, we see people that don't even live in the county that show up, and they're standing room only. And people see people that they don't even know. They don't even live in this county, but they're brought out by the industry. But Lisa, I'd like you to finish what you wanted to talk about earlier about what are the things that you're doing to combat this. And I saw Dr. John Eayrs' name there, my mentor, and for so many years, and our mentor. Give us a little insight about where you were at that point when we moved on to talk to Robyn.
Okay, I'm even going to unmute myself this time. Well, one thing I didn't give for context is I live in a town called Lake Town, and this is a picture of the lake that is outside my window. This is not a fake background. This is really where I live. So my husband and I do a commercial forage operation where we produce both grass and legume forages for cattle and sheep and horses. So that's what we do. But what we've decided is to write off the county. Although I did run for county board 2 years ago and I lost by 15 votes. But the county has been no help at all. So what we did last spring is we worked at the town level and got people elected to the town boards. And so now what we are doing is we've put together 6 townships that cover about 252 miles of area, and is actually in 2 counties. And we have pooled our resources and research together and written an ordinance that we think threads the needle on Wisconsin law of what towns can do. And we're calling that the town partnership project. And what I tell people to do is right away start collecting names, start sending people everywhere, send them to the outside the farmer's market or at any kind of event, and wherever you go, just start talking about hog factories coming to town and collect names and build a mailing list, because we now have an email list, a private email list. It's probably 300 people. And then we also have a Facebook page that has, I believe it's thousands of people on it. So we can actually turn people out. So we've turned out over 200 people at county events, and that really has an impact on them to a large degree. And then the other thing is to talk about the alternative, and that's why I think this is a great conference, because you really need to paint an alternative vision. Dr. Eayrs does a great job talking about how the current economics don't work, and how what we could be doing is just as important when you're talking to people. So we are a rural economy. We are a somewhat intact food production system. We actually have middle-class farmers left in our area. We have 6 family-owned meat processors in our small towns. which in most of rural America, all the meat processors are gone. And we actually small land owners who produce livestock. We have hundreds of people producing sheep and hogs and cattle. So we're kind of I don't know how unique we are, but you don't hear much about intact food production systems like we have. So we try to really focus on that. So those are some of the things that we do.
Thank you so much. Do we have any questions from the?
Karen, I was just about to hop in. And so right now we are in the Q&A section of this call, but we haven't gotten any questions in chat and I don't see any hand raised. So please, if you have any questions, you can raise your hand by clicking the reaction button at the bottom dashboard and then clicking that raise hand icon, or you can write your question in chat. I'm sure Karen has lots more questions she can continue asking, but if any audience member has a question, we'll prioritize that.
Yeah, I can recall that in my first experience at a public hearing in Knox County back in 1996, 57 of us signed in to speak, and it was Murphy Family Farms out of North Carolina coming into Knox County, and the person who was in control of that sign-in sheet gave that to Murphy Family Farms, and they promptly slap suited 57 of us for signing in to speak at a meeting. And there was a 80-year-old woman in our group who could barely walk in on crutches, also sued, who she didn't even speak. So that was my first taste of this issue. And then many more flavors to come after that. But if anyone else would like to jump in and add, I have to say that Robyn has learned a lot in the last year on the run, and we're continuing to work together. And one of the things that Robyn's group has done is assisted another community in Prairie City. That facility is looking to go into that area, and she has helped that community and the mayor of that town pass a resolution against this. So what we do at SRAP is try to teach people how to do this, and then they pass their knowledge on to others and empower others. So we've just seen some great progress with her group this year.
And Karen, I do see a question, and if you'd like me to ask it.
Yeah.
So there is a question from Sam Wright. What has happened to the water quality in your areas? Any tainted wells, rivers, algae blooms?
Who wants to go first?
Well, we're working to keep them out of our area, but it's one thing we really recommend you do is try to get baseline water quality data. So get baseline well data. That's one of the things our towns are working on, particularly rescue plan money, the ARPA money that's coming down at the county and local level to get good baseline data on water quality.
Yeah, and at SRAP, we do have water quality training that we can help folks with in their rural communities. And we teach you how to do a chain of command and how to handle the samples. And by doing that, we shouldn't really be having to do this testing. I mean, our regulatory agencies should be taking care of this, but actually we step in and do a lot. We see what happens in our rural areas. We are the neighbors, and we encourage folks to do that. Even if a facility hasn't been built yet, we say, learn how to do water quality testing and do it the right way with chain of command. And we're there to help with that. We've had water quality problems in Peoria County from one of the biggest dairies in the state, and they are now bankrupt and sold. But we went through 20 years of severe odors and water quality issues with one of the biggest manure spills in the state's history. So every promise that they made to us was broken. And even with Murphy Family Farms, the original CAFO that came into Knox County, every promise was broken. They were sued by the Illinois Attorney General's office for water quality violations and ongoing odors. You know, we just learned that everything that they said from one county to the next, it was the same mantra that they would tell people, and people would try to believe it, but knew that they weren't really coming true. This was going to be a big effect on everybody.
And Karen, I want to let you know that we do have 3 questions on deck, so I don't know if we want to keep on going with this
Yeah.
question or if you'd like, okay,
No,
great.
let's go.
Then the next question I have is from Kathy, and Kathy, you should be able to unmute yourself and ask your question. I see you have your hand raised.
Yes, hi. So all of you ladies sound like you're very good speakers and you're very confident, but I'm sure at the very beginning of the fight, you felt very alone. And I would like somebody to speak to how you have grown and what kind of learning you had reading you had to do, building up your self-confidence, because we're constantly working with new communities where folks are like starting at square one. Thanks.
May I answer that?
Go for it, Robyn.
Yeah, this has been an interesting process because once we found out about this, then we got to know our neighbors. You know, we don't have anybody really close, but it's brought us all together in a common way, and we've made connections that we probably never would have made had this issue not come forward. And I think of those people, you know, they each have their own specialty. Like one is technical and one is a good letter writer, and as a group, you can make so much more progress than you can as an individual. And so, you know, just bonding together and having meetings and giving people the option of things to do.
Thank you, Kathy. Yes, I call it the silver lining. And these networks of friendships and relationships don't go away. They're remaining across county lines, across state lines. That's one of the beauties of this issue and working on this issue. Go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say that the thing that I really recommend people do is before you go to testify, put some bullet points together and just do bullet points and then practice. Because I mean, I can't believe I was nervous to get up and testify in front of our county board that's made up of a bunch of like 80-year-old guys who are basically asleep. But it really helped to do bullet points and really get your argument down. And then, like Robyn says, we have a lot of people who don't want hog farms but won't speak. But I found that talking to them and them saying, yeah, go Lise, do this. I mean, I have all kinds of farmers who have called me up and told me to go ahead and do this. That's how we found out they were trying to move into our neighborhood. So really reaching out to your neighbors is really important, and not in a righteous way. And then in our area, property values are a huge issue. These things are going to whack 30% of people's property values, even if you're like a mile or two away. So I found that there was a lot of common ground with people who didn't want to see their property values slashed. And that really gave me more confidence, because the water quality issues and environmental issues and animal rights issues, all these different angles, some of them that alienate some people, but everyone wants their property values to stay strong. So that's one of the issues that I found gave me more confidence.
Sonja?
Just a brief comment. You know, there's the old saying, you know, if you don't like the message, shoot the messenger. And so what has given me personal confidence, this is something I learned as a very young lawyer. Like, I knew, you know, 6 months into practice, that if someone was attacking me personally, I was on the right track. And trust me, the hog industry is very well entrenched in Dodge County. They do not appreciate the fact that I sit on panels like this, that I expose the industry, that I know how they work. They do not want me to share this message. And so they attack me personally. And trust me, I have been called all kinds of names in this process that I've never been called as a lawyer in the courtroom. So stay on task. I guess that's my message here. Stay on task. You're going to be attacked as a messenger. It's part of the dirty work, you know, that's involved here. But just know that your work is so important. We are essentially, if you've read Ibsen's, you know, book or his play, You know, we're the enemy of the people. And so we are clearly an enemy of the people because we're speaking the truth. And so just keep speaking the truth.
Yeah, I think one of the the strongest thing that ever happened to us was an internal Farm Bureau memo was leaked to us that said they have won the public relations battle, meaning us. The people of Illinois fighting against factory farms have won the public relations battle. That got out to us, and that means everything. And Sonja, you're right. Keep it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw one more answer in on this, and that is when you're working in your own community, keep it real. Look at even the people who are pro CAFO as human beings. Don't get into what I was just doing earlier, which was saying things about my county board members. I really try to keep it real because everybody is related to everybody and we're all cousins. And that's one way I try to build my confidence, is that I'm treating people respectfully at the individual level.
Thank you, everyone. Let's keep the conversation going. Thank you.